previous movie, we discussed how the pattern was created to create this little metal siding of this little Nuts for Nuts truck. Well, we're going to move over a little bit to the right here and look at this same pattern, but how it was used slightly different. Right there. That's the Mr. Softy truck. Now we'll look at the side of the truck. There's the art for the actual truck itself. Now, every element is created on its own, so we'll look at the little Mr. Softy guy right here, which I called Mr. Softy Dude. Now, right here, if you look closely at his wafer face, there's the exact same pattern again, except a slight modification made it look like what you see here. So, let's go and see how we modified that to get the effect. So right here, in a layer, I'm going to create a layer, and in that layer, I'm going to fill that layer with that pattern that we created before, right there. Click OK. There's the effect. So now, let's turn this off for a second, and in this layer right here, I'm going to create a layer on top of it, and I'm going to just make the shape that I want my cone to be. So I'm just going to take my pen tool, and I'll just create a cup shape, just like so. Very simple cup. There. That's all. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's just to give us the effect. Now I'm going to go in there and pick a color. That's going to be for my wafer. Let's just pick this kind of a yellowish tone right in there. And in that layer, I'm going to go ahead and fill that path with that color right there. Turn off the path, and that's it. So now we have that other layer, the layer that has that pattern, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distort this pattern into that shape back there. So first I'm going to clip it. Holding down my Option key, Alt on a PC, I'm going to click between the two layers to mask that pattern inside of that shape, just like that, which I'm now going to go in there and distort it. I'm going to go in there and say Distort. And I'll take that pattern and just kind of drag it over to the corners of my shape that I created right there like that. And let's bring this one over and grab that one back over there to that corner, and this one over to here. And there we see we have the shape that we want. Now we want to curve it a little bit. That's easy. We'll just go in there and say warp it. So I can grab this corner here, drag it up, this corner up, and just kind of curve these guys down. And the same thing down at the bottom, we'll just curve those like that. So now we have that curvature that we want. Now the effect of the Mr. Softy, that is basically just a layer style. So I'm going to go into the layer styles for that pattern layer, and I'm going to take the fill opacity and dump it right off the bat. We don't need to see those tones. We created those tones for the metal in the nut cart, but in this particular case, they're like little indents in the wafer. So by giving the pattern a little inner shadow, just like that, we can see that we've created that sense that the wafers are now indented inside of that cone. By simply changing the color to something a little more along this line here, and say we pick up a little tone somewhere around here, a little brown like that. That looks good. Click OK. We got this brown. We could punch it up a little bit, increase the distance a little bit, and maybe even the light source. Just move it over just a slight bit so we get a little more of an angle like that. Increase the size a little, just like that, and click OK, and we see that now we have the effect of the wafer. Now, if you want to add a little more dimension to this, which you can, let's give it another layer style. We'll give it a little bevel and emboss, but we're going to put the bevel and emboss on the outside. See, the tones are on the outside there, and I'm going to change the direction of the light. And first of all, if I just change the direction, you see that everything is changing. So I want to make sure that the global light is turned off for this particular layer style. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to change the direction of the light to be on this side. And there we see that now we have this little highlight right where we want it. So it looks like those indents are going in. We'll just pump that up a little bit so you can get that nice white. Bring down the brown. We don't want the black. In fact, we'll make it a brown. That looks good. And then we have that nice highlight right along the edge there. We could punch that up a little bit and maybe make it just a little smaller. So there we see that nice little highlight right along the edge there. Click OK, and there we see that we have these little indents. The exact same pattern, but with a slight modification and layer styles, it gave us a completely different look.